And joining us today on our Book Talk segment, great to welcome two authors of a very interesting book. It's going to, I'm sure, help a lot of folks as they get ready for maybe enjoying Labor Day weekend or any time that they want to have some downtime and enjoy themselves. It's called The 12-Bottle Bar, a dozen bottles, hundreds of cocktails, and a new way to drink. We're joined today by David Salmonson and Lesley Jacob Salmonson on the telephone. And David and Lesley, good to talk to you. How are you today?
We are great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, doing great. Had a chance to read through the book, and I guess this all started from a website that you put out first, right, David, or Leslie?
Yeah, we just got to a point where we enjoyed a good cocktail, and we got a bit frustrated by the cost of going out and spending, what back in the early 2000s was $10, what now is, upwards to $20 per drink. And also when we would open magazines, we'd find a great recipe that some mixologist would have contributed, and there's a $70 bottle that you have to go out, or it's sometimes multiple, just to make that one drink. So it really, the site started first as a way to sort of simplify and how do we make this both for ourselves and for our readers easy and inexpensive to enjoy classic cocktails at home. The book came from that.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about mixing drinks and all that, but I understand, like you said, the expense of it. If nothing else, it'll save you some money to do this at home.
Quite a bit. And it's more enjoyable, too.
12 bottles. How did you kind of break it down into those particular ingredients? I know you kind of break it down into which ones you should get, cost-wise and all that, but how did you get it down to that number?
Well, we basically looked at several things. We were looking for versatility, meaning different spirits that could make many drinks. We were also looking at historical context, because the spirits that we choose in our book, for the most part, have been used in classic cocktails to a great degree, so they form like the foundation of great cocktail making. And we were looking at accessibility and availability. So those were all issues, and that's how we came up with our spirits, and liqueur, vermouth, and bitters.
And these all would be handled pretty much any recipe you want to make within these 12, right? For the most part, you can make it.
It's really, most drinks follow into classes of drinks. So you have your sours, you have your like a whiskey sour, you have your vermouth drinks, such as a martini and a Manhattan. So we wanted to cover all those styles of drinks. And then really, the biggest difference between a daiquiri and a sidecar and a margarita is the base spirit and the amount of ratio of citrus and sugar that you put in, or the type of sugar you might put in.
Yeah, I was surprised. I've always heard of, you want very dry and very, very dry martinis, meaning, I guess, minimizing the amount of vermouth in it. But I was surprised how many different types of vermouth there are, and exactly what vermouth was. I didn't even know until I read your book. So I learned something.
Well, that was actually something that we wanted to make sure people realized, because most people will have a bottle of something on the top of their fridge, but they may not have all of the key ingredients to make great cocktails. So the vermouth and the bitters were key elements, and it surprised some people that we included those in our 12 bottles. But we did that because they're not things that people have on hand, and if you have them, they make such a myriad of drinks that you increase your possibilities by tenfold.
And they're inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
And vermouth is actually made from a bush, right? Did I read that right?
Well, vermouth is actually, it's based on wine, and then it has herbal elements, roots, flowers, all kinds of things that have been, put into it to give it a very specific flavor. So it was, in Europe, it's been drunk for years over ice as an aperitif, the varying versions, dry and sweet.
You have so many great recipes in the book, and great names of these drinks, too. I think that's always kind of interesting when you hear the names of some of these drinks that have Rum Ricky, I guess, is one, and one called the Blinker. Funny names.
Well, yeah, and those are both classic drinks. One thing we tried to avoid were the sexual innuendo drinks that seem to be proliferated in the 80s. So
a lot of those.
We have a Between the Sheets, but that's kind of a sexual innuendo from the 40s. So.
Well, the Sex on the Beach, that was the first one I ever heard of.
Yep.
Is that still popular, those kind of drinks, or is that kind of out of style?
Sort of tongue-in-cheek. That's where the popularity comes from mostly now.
Talk a little bit about some of the recipes and how you kind of, I guess a drink is whatever you want to put in there, but I guess there's certain ways to do it properly, right?
Well, sure. What you're looking for is the quote we like to use is that a well-made cocktail is a war between ingredients that no side wins. So you want to taste your spirit. If you're using a great spicy rye, you want to taste that. You want to have just enough citrus to be so that, especially if you're making a sour, so that the drink lives up to its name, but not so much citrus that it's off-putting. So you need a bit of sugar to counter that. You should have all these things so that not any one of them gets lost.
These 12 bottles that you talk about in the 12-bottle bar, where would you recommend the best place to? Your local liquor store or food store? How do you find these 12 bottles in particular that you want to buy?
We certainly try to choose bottles. They may be arranged. There may be some that are a little more esoteric and harder to find, but within each spirit category, we give you choices that you will definitely be able to find in a major liquor store. And then certainly there are websites like Drink Up New York and places like that where you can have things sent to you. But it was really important to us that it didn't become too difficult to obtain your spirits, because when it starts getting too esoteric, then you're back to square one, which is, this is too difficult, I don't want to deal with it.
And I think you break it down into expense. You could go somewhere around $200 to $300 roughly for the 12 bottles?
$200 at the low end if you bought everything, and about $350 at the high end, and it breaks down to roughly $2.50 to $3 a cocktail. So you make hundreds of cocktails, you get your whole bar, and there's no reason you can't start with just one bottle or 3 bottles. We make the argument for that at the beginning if it's a little too intimidating.
A lot better than paying $14 to $16 plus tip.
Yes.
And the joke we like to make is, that the book costs less than most cocktails.
Right.
So, it's the teach a man to fish analogy.
Is there a particular drink now that's kind of the hot one? I mean, I don't know offhand, but is there one that people are just going to, or a group of drinks that are popular now?
It's always changing. Certainly, and it changes across different parts of the country. There's a big resurgence in tiki drinks right now. I think the cocktail movement has realized that it's taken itself a little bit too seriously at times, and there's nothing more enjoyable than a well-made tiki drink. Beer is beginning to show up in cocktails quite a bit. You're seeing cocktails, and we have a number in the book that are traditional cocktails that add a beer element to it, and that's quite fun, and I think bridges the gap for somebody who might not be a traditional cocktail drinker. Les, anything you want to?
I would say definitely the tiki, and even now what you're starting to see popping up are some of these sort of retro 60s, 70s. You mentioned the Sex on the Beach, but we're also starting to see the Grasshopper come back, and the White Russian, and the Alabama Slammer, but well done with quality ingredients and with a little bit of tongue-in-cheekness. As David said, they don't want to take themselves so seriously. Drinking is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I think you even mentioned in the book the show Mad Men kind of brought back a resurgence of the cocktails when back in the 60s, what businessmen would drink, right? At lunch or in the office.
And it's a funny, it's a great analogy, because the one thing that's always kind of come to our minds is that you think of those movies and you think of Mad Men when somebody says, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" Today, if we asked any guest that question, most of us would be terrified if they said yes.
And the odds are the guests might not even have an answer for them.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't really have a favorite drink.
12-Bottle Bar is the name of the book. We've been talking with the authors David and Lesley Salmonson, and I know the website is probably a place, but do you want to direct people to a different one to get the book, or is that the best place?
Well, the best place is it's on the big Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Pals, IndieBound, local bookstores. We love it if you go to local bookstores. You can also find it in Urban Outfitters. So hopefully it's everywhere you might look for a book.
Great. David and Lesley, appreciate you taking a few minutes. Good luck with the book, and look forward to talking to you again sometime. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Thank you.